Hi, it's me, Nomad again. Um, so in this video, I want to talk about my story, how I got here. And I'm gonna try to keep it short. I don't know if I can, I'm gonna try, but basically, um, I guess ever since I left for college, I've been nomadic. And, I went to college in the late 80s, and you know, college kids are kind of nomadic. You go from dorm to, you might share an apartment with somebody, then you might get your own place for a little bit, and you go live with your parents, and and the idea is that eventually you're going to get a job, and then you're eventually going to like settle down, right? Well, that just never happened to me. Um, I got married, I had kids. The closest time that happened was I was staying with my mom, and unfortunately she got cancer, and when she was sick, she told me she wanted me to have the house. But I didn't really want to live in Houston. This was in Houston, Texas, by the way. And so we ended up selling the house, my siblings and I. I was kind of pressured to sell it. There's a long story there, but and then I ended up moving to LA. Then I ended up moving to Vancouver, BC, then ended up moving to Seattle, and in Seattle I moved around a lot, and then we moved back to San Diego, and then we moved to Los Angeles, which is where I am currently. And in each of those cities, I've been in all kinds of situations. I've been in, geez, I've shacked up with relatives, friends. I've rented apartments. I was in a situation once where I was in a lot of short-term rentals, Airbnb kind of things. I was in a situation where I was in one of those and they filed for bankruptcy and the house was in limbo, and we ended up living rent-free in that house for 2 years. I was in low-income housing. I've been in different types of homeless programs where they transitional housing. I mean, I've been in shelters. I've slept in my car a couple times. Yeah, I've done like all kinds of stuff. I lived in a park for 3 days once. Yeah, yeah, and I haven't had a permanent place. And the thing is, it's like I felt bad about it, especially for my kids for a long time, because we've been taught that you're supposed to settle down and be in one spot. And maybe it's because when I was growing up we moved a lot. I don't know. I mean, we moved a lot for whatever reason. There was a 4-year stint when I was a kid where we stayed in one house, and that was awesome in that particular neighborhood. And then we went through all kinds of neighborhoods. So maybe that was just a habit I picked up in my childhood. I don't know. All I know is that I can't seem to get a permanent place. And I feel like, well, I felt, because I don't feel this way anymore, but I felt that maybe there was something wrong with me. I need to get a job or get an income where I can afford to rent a permanent place or rent or buy a house. Like, that's what you do. And it just never happened. And I don't think it's ever going to happen. I mean, and that's okay, because I don't want to play that game anymore. So I don't, all I can say is that, after, so this situation happened recently that opened my eyes, and I can't remember if I said it in the beginning of the video or not, but it's basically, we ended up basically homeless in a park, and in Los Angeles. My worst fear when I moved to LA was what if we end up homeless in LA? Like it would be a nightmare in my mind, I thought. So, but we ended up that way. And so at first it was I was so terrified of that outcome. And I realized something here. So I just want to digress on this. I realized that up until that point, that fear was driving me. I was trying my best to pay my rent and pay whatever to avoid that. But the situation just came about where, you know, we ran out of money, and, you know, the person who was, you know, we had to leave where we were, and then we just ended up in this park for 3 days, and we slept in our car, and it was crazy. So, but the thing that happened was that I felt that morning when I had to finally accept, and I'll have to do another video about the situation that led up to it, because it was pretty bad. But once it was like I accepted it, so I just said, you know what, I guess this is our situation, I accept it. All of a sudden, like, this giant weight lifted off of me, and I just felt this incredible sense of freedom I had never felt in a long, well, I can't say never felt, but I hadn't felt in a while. It was like this giant burden was gone, and I could breathe. I mean, it was amazing. I mean, this wasn't supposed to happen. Like, I was supposed to feel bad, right? Like, this situation that I've been avoiding, like, you know, being homeless in the park, your worst nightmare. Like, I'm supposed to be, like it's supposed to be the end, right? But the exact opposite happened. I felt this incredible sense of freedom. It was the weirdest thing. And, like, I'm like, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. Like, I should feel bad, but I don't. Like, intellectually, I'm like, I don't have a place to live. I'm living in my car with my kids and my family. I should feel bad, but I don't. And so I just went with that. And then I realized why I didn't feel bad, which was because finally that rent guillotine was gone. It, you know, the only feeling I could think of to help you see it is like, it was akin to dying and then realizing you can't die again. It's like, okay, I'm dead now, I can't die again. So, you know, that threat had been acted on of eviction or whatever you want to call it. I wasn't evicted, but I had to leave where I was. And, you know, it's like, you know, they're always threatening you with that. You know, like, that's the thing they use. Like, if you don't pay, we're going to evict you, right? We're going to kick you out. And so, I mean, I didn't get kicked out, but my point being is that the fear was gone. So, and then I saw what was happening. For the first time, I realized that this whole thing with rent, with mortgages, is a scam. There's no other basic way to say it. And, like, it's the biggest scam going. Now, you know, I'm going to do another post on that, but, you know, I'm going to just come out and say that straight to you. You know, it's like, it's a scam that we've all fallen for, and no one seems to question it. And not only do we not question it, but we're meant to feel ashamed if we don't participate. Like, you know, it's like you're some kind of bum, or you're this hopeless person or whatever, because you don't want to play this game. And it's just crazy. And so I'm going to go into more detail about why it is a scam and why it is crazy. But I just wanted to, that's just part of my story and how this whole blog came about. So, yeah, so basically from that point on, I seriously started thinking about, okay, is there another way to live without paying rent or a mortgage? Like, what are the ways that it could happen? And then I started to realize, like, how much money I have spent on rent in the last 2 years. I literally have spent about $70,000 on rent in the last 2 years, and I have nothing to show for it, except a quasi good rental history. It doesn't even show up on your credit, right? It's just a big, giant, mega transfer of wealth. And I keep thinking about all the things I could have done with that money. But again, another story, because I don't want this video to be too long. So yeah, I started thinking about that. I started thinking about other alternative ways. I started thinking about, is there a way to not pay any rent at all? Is there a way to live where you don't have a mortgage? Is there a way to live where you own something, you know, instead of just helping someone else increase their home value or building value? which is what you're doing when you rent something. That money goes into improvements into that place which you don't own, and it increases in value. And it's just like, I have relatives that I know that have been renting for like a long time, and they have nothing to show for it. They have no assets, right? If they died tomorrow, their kids would have nothing. But the person, the landlord, the one they've been paying, they will have something. And it's just screwy, man. And no one questions this, you know? Ah, wow. So anyway, I'm exploring this whole thing on this blog, and that's my story. So there's a lot more to my story. I'll have to kind of go into the long version later. It's on the blog, or it will be, and you can learn about it. And yeah, let me know what you think. But basically, I just want to know, is it possible, to live this way? And I think it is. And I've seen many people's stories about it and the way they're living. People living in boats, people living in RVs, people living in industrial buildings, people living in tents. It's like people building their own little houses, people living in, shipping containers, houseboats. I mean, there's so many alternatives out there